I think another kind of less challenging problem that I found down there was the weather, because there were like, it totally depends on the time of year, but there were some crazy like monsoons I went through, and you can't just sit indoors and do nothing while there's rain outside. And so we had to keep working. And so it seriously, we were walking through this like courtyard one time, and like branches off of trees were falling because it was so windy and so rainy, and I swear there was lightning. And we were just walking through the streets trying to clap at doors, and people would open their window and be like, "You're crazy, go home." And they would just close the doors. And we were like, "Wait, we thought you were supposed to like invite us into your house to get us off of the rainy streets," but it kind of had a backfire effect. And so that was definitely a struggle, was trying to just keep working through the crazy weather, or if it's like, 120 degrees and you're wearing these black clothes and everything, just trying to find the strength to move forward and just keep knocking on doors. The weather can be super crazy, and not like, I seriously were some days I just didn't want to leave the apartment and I didn't want to go work because I was so tired, and I was just like, it's raining outside or it's super hot, and it was just so hard. But one thing I realized after the fact was that even though I like thought those things, after I got past those crazy weather times, I guess, I realized that I didn't fully realize what was happening and how big of a challenge it was, because I got through it. I kept pushing forward, and I got to the point where I just didn't even realize or care if it was super hot and super humid. I just kept working because I knew I had a job to do. And because of that, I swear the Spirit like helped regulate my body, and so I wasn't feeling the full effects of the weather or something, because I seriously didn't even feel the effects of it later, and I didn't even care. And even though I was walking through a monsoon, I just had a smile on my face, and I was so excited to go meet people and try to teach them about Jesus Christ, So it's interesting that the Spirit can help you with anything, and it was so amazing to feel the Spirit so much in my mission. Okay, so this wasn't me, but with my companion, yes, we had a crazy animal story. So we went out on Refuerzos. I don't even know how to say that in English. It's where a bunch of missionaries from the entire zone come together, and we all just go out through one area and just contact like crazy. And so the missionaries in that area get a ton of potential investigators, and so the work just like flourishes for that time, So it was our turn to do it in our area. And so we all split up and we were all going out. And then my companion and I were knocking on a door, and while we were talking to this girl, she was like a young teenage girl, their dog comes out and pees on my companion's leg. And she was like, "That's awesome." And so the girl wasn't even gonna like help us out to clean it or anything. And so eventually we convinced her to like get us a towel so we could try to wipe off, everything that was happening. She wasn't interested, we moved on. And then probably like a half an hour later, we were knocking on this guy's door and we were talking to him, and he seemed really interested. He seemed like an awesome guy, and we were talking to him. And as we were leaving, after we talked to him, his dog comes out and bites my companion. And we were freaking out. We're like, "Oh my gosh, what just happened?" Because I'm sure he could like smell the pee and everything. And so we were freaking out. We called the elders and we're like, "What do we do?" Like, a dog just bit her. And the rule is if you get bit by a dog, you have to go to the hospital and get a rabies shot and everything. But it hadn't actually broken the skin. But we had to meet up with the elders to make sure she didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. And so she was like limping because she just got bit by this huge dog. But so we didn't have to go to the hospital, so we just kept working. She's like, "No, I am doing this. I'm not going home." And I was like, "You need to go home and rest." And she was just so determined. It was her first transfer. She was a little greenie, and she was so amazing and so enthusiastic about the work. She was like, "I don't care. I am going to ignore my bite, and we're just going to keep doing this because the missionaries all came over to help our area, So I'm like, "All right, I'm leaving it up to you." And so we kept going, and then probably 10 minutes later, another dog peed on her, and she was like, "Okay, I give up. This is just not a good day for me." She's like, "I'm going back." And so we like met up with the missionaries and just went back to our chapel, and she was just like, "This was a very interesting day for me." So it was just so funny, and we still joke about that, how she had a crazy dog day. It was just the entire day dogs were just attacking her, and it was so funny. The biggest piece of advice I would have to say is read your scriptures every day. I don't have an awesome scripture study every day. Most of the time I'm just reading a couple of verses, but that is what's going to keep you going. After you think when you're on the mission, you're going to go home and life's going to be great because you can do whatever you want and you get to make your own decisions, make your own schedule. It's not as glamorous as it sounds, but you have to do it. And so reading the scriptures is what's kept me going through the years, of being home. And even when life is so hard, the scriptures is what strengthens me. So that's probably the biggest thing I would say. I know a lot of return missionaries that have become inactive, and it always starts with them stopping to read the Book of Mormon. I was about to say that in Spanish. They just don't read the book as much anymore, and so that's the biggest thing. Even if you can't do an amazing study every day, read the Book of Mormon every day, and that's what's going to keep your testimony strong and keep you going in the gospel. And then for missionaries that learned a foreign language, I would definitely say keep up on your language, whether it's reading your scriptures in your foreign language or, meeting up with people that know that same language. I have been able to keep up on my Spanish because, a couple of my brothers speak Spanish, so I talk with them sometimes. And then I work in a restaurant, and most of the people in the kitchen and in the back, they're all Mexicans, and so I talk with all of them in Spanish. And I've actually been able to use it fairly often in my life, and so I'm always really, really glad that I remember the Spanish, because I know a lot of missionaries that stop studying it and they've just lost it, and so it's really hard for them to talk to members that they taught, down there, and they can't talk to people and teach like they used to, and so they really regret not keeping up on that foreign language. So that's another big one, I think. And then just continue being excited about the work and never stop trying to share your testimony or share the gospel with other people, even though it can be really hard, especially being in Utah. It's really a struggle for me up here, but I do as much as I can, and I use social media, and I just do the best I can to be a part of the missionary efforts, even if it's just with family history. That's still very important, so just keep up on the excitement of the mission, and then just don't be lazy. Just remember all of the amazing things you learned on your mission, especially the schedule and the discipline. Remember that, and don't just ignore it, and just be glad that you can finally relax and sleep in. Keep going with it, and it'll really help you later in life.